In 1968, 10-year-old Mary Bell lived in Scotswood, a small suburb of Newcastle upon Tyne, an area which was still living in wartime Britain and poverty was rife. At the time, Scotswood was a rough area with lots of criminal activities, and police being called was a regular occurrence. Scotswood still had a lot of damaged slum housing left over from the war, which were dormant, making it a very, very uncomfortable environment to live in. The people living in the area would describe it as a tough life, but they just got on with it. With parents trying to make ends meet any way they could, the children were left to play out on the streets. Some of the slums were being knocked down, and Rat Alley was used as a children's playground. Although in a rough area, they would leave their doors open and the neighbours would all keep an eye on the kids and would help out if there was ever trouble. Mary Bell lived in a one-bedroomed house with her mother, Betty, and her father, Bill, on White House Road. Betty was a lady of the night and would often go out and get her clientele, which she would often bring these men back to the home, and Mary would often be there while these men visited. Mary was often medicated with sleeping pills to sedate her, but it has been documented that she witnessed many acts of violence towards her mother, including masochistic sexual acts. Also, Mary was used as a prop within these acts, and she was essayed during Betty's work. Betty had depression, and her mood changes were legendary, going from one day trying to get Mary adopted to the next day refusing and taking her back, with no apparent reason for it happening in the beginning. Bill Bell was a drunkard and a petty thief. He would also leave Mary alone while he was out committing criminal acts. Mary was deeply embedded in her parents' criminal background. Mary's disturbed behaviour was noticeable from a young age, described by someone as scary. She would fixate on you. Mary would be fine 1 minute and then become aggressive the next. They also described that Mary's eyes would go wide and black, that her head would shake, and that she would use her hands to grab people by the neck. Teachers soon learned that she had a sadistic streak, but also that Mary was brighter than average and used this to get herself out of trouble on many occasions. Mary made friends with a girl called Norma Bell. They were unrelated. Norma, who unlike Mary was quieter and more of a follower, described as being a bit dim and unbright. Saturday, the 11th of May, 1968, Mary and Norma picked up an unnamed boy, aged 3, from where he was playing in the streets, took him to buy some sweets, and after some time he was found wandering, dazed and bleeding. Ambulances were called along with the police, but no further action was taken. The next day, a woman made a complaint that her daughter had been attacked by Mary, in which she put her hands around her neck and squeezed. While she was in the sandpit playing, but again, nothing was done to punish Mary for her actions, due to the girl being too scared to tell the truth, that also Mary had tried to force sand into her mouth and down her throat. 2 weeks later, on the 25th of May, Martin Brown, a 4-year-old boy playing with his friends, he was described as a mischievous, cheeky, but playful boy. At 5 p.m, his neighbour called his mother to say that he had an accident after being out playing all day. She ran to where he was and discovered a local man trying to revive her son. An ambulance was called and he was taken to Newcastle Hospital and pronounced dead on arrival. Because his death was mysterious, the police were called to investigate. and it was recorded as an unnatural death. There were pills found in the house left by the occupiers of the home. 3 days later, the police were called to a day nursery in Woodlands Crescent. There had been a break-in, which the classrooms had been left in a mess, and they found 4 pieces of paper scribbled. On one was a note saying, "I schmurdered so that I may come back. We schmurder, watch out." And on another, "We did schmurder Martin Brown." Woodlands Crescent was situated close to both Mary and Norma's homes. This wasn't linked to the girls or on Martin's death at the time of discovery. Martin's mum was interviewed and stated that Mary and Norma visited after Martin's death and remembers being asked questions by Mary and Norma. They asked if they could see Martin. Very confused, she explained to them gently that Martin had passed away, and to which they replied that they knew, but they wanted to see Martin in his coffin. This caused more distress to Martin's mother and thought it was a very odd request of the girls to have made. With his death not being able to be decided upon, they put it down to being caused by the conditions of the Rat Alley slums. Wednesday, the 31st of July, Brian Howell, a 3-year-old, playing out alone and watching the houses be demolished. Mary and Norma took him to play on a patch of land called the Tin Lizzie, and he was never seen again. Police came to the Tin Lizzie and Brian Howell was found. Hair had been cut from his head and he had puncture wounds on his legs and private areas. They felt that the injuries were caused after death and must have been done by someone young due to the gentleness of the depth of the injuries. The post-mortem showed that Brian had been strangled, and the cut marks were naive attempts to leave initial marks on the body, and concluded it was the work of a small child. With the similarities of Martin's death, the police reopened his case. The police announced that they are looking for a child, and out of the hundreds of children in the area, there was one child who was waiting and wanting attention and was drawing it to herself in this awful time. Mary Bell. The children of the area were already aware that Norma and Mary were causing trouble. Mary had already been boasting to them while in the playground that she had strangled a boy, and many of them had had experience of their vicious nature firsthand. The police decided to speak with Mary Bell. Do I need to break? Is everyone okay in the chat? Is everyone okay? Okay. Okay. I'm just checking. Okay. The police decided to speak with Mary Bell, and they went to the house, and her father refused to let them in, so they had no choice but to wait. A young boy with learning difficulties had witnessed what had happened with Brian, which enabled the police to bring Mary and Norma in for questioning. As the investigation narrowed on Mary, she suddenly remembered seeing an 8-year-old boy with Brian on the day that he died. The boy hit Brian for no reason, she claimed. He had also seen the same boy playing with broken scissors, but that boy had been at the airport on the afternoon Brian had died. By revealing that she knew about the scissors, which was confidential evidence, Mary implicated herself. She described them exactly like silver-coloured something, and something wrong with the scissors. like one leg was broken or even bent. It was becoming clear that either Mary or Norma or both had seen Brian die, and one of them was probably the killer. Present during the time the girls were being questioned was a psychiatrist to try to understand the children. Mary behaved quite tough and unfazed. She denied the allegations to the end. Mary and Norma, at the end of each investigation, were taken into care with each other in a home in Newcastle. The police had found the scissors used to cause the marks on Brian after his death, including the letter M that had been marked on Brian's body. They also made the connections to the notes discovered during the break-in of the nursery, and they linked them to Mary Bell. Also, fibres of Mary's sweatshirt was found on the victim. One of Mary's teachers, who had heard about her arrest, decided to check her school news book, and discovered on the front cover Mary had written a headline which read, "Boy found dead in old house." Then the report on the inside, which is shown on the screen. Mary wrote, "There were crowds of people by an old house. I asked people what was the matter. There had been a boy that just laid down and died." Beneath the writing, Mary drew a picture of the dead body of Martin Brown and an initial M drawn on his torso, and a bottle of pills which she wrote tablets next to, and a drawing of the workman who had discovered Martin. The police realised that the pills had never been released to the public. Along with the note discovery, the mark on Brian's body, these facts sealed the case for detectives. Mary and Norma were both arrested and charged for the murder. Both Mary and Norma denied charges and both blamed each other for the killings. A lot of people felt that it was inappropriate to have two small girls in open court, and that it was impossible for them to have a fair trial. Although the lawyers of the girls had access to them at all times to be able to reassure them when they required it, which did put those minds at rest. The trial took 9 days. Mary lacked ordinary feelings of a normal child and was labelled a psychopath. Mary Bell was convicted of manslaughter. Norma acquitted due to being simple-minded and led by her friend. Norma was returned to her family. Mary was sent to prison at 11 years old. 11 years old. The public wished for Mary to be rehabilitated, and the prison service just did not know what to do with her. She was sent to a secure school, Red Bank, for her rehabilitation, to receive care and love they felt that she was seeking. Most blamed Mary's situation on her parents, and they saw her as a victim herself. Mary's mum did visit her often. I have got an extract from the psychiatrist which read, at her trial, a psychiatrist who had examined Mary testified that she showed classic symptoms of psychopathology by her lack of feeling towards others. She showed no remorse whatsoever, no tears, no anxiety. She was completely unemotional about the whole affair and merely resentful at her detention. I could see no real criminal motivation. Mary's abusive mother, her genetic wildcard of a father, and physical damage likely incurred by the repetitive drug overdoses all contributed to her psychopathy. Her inability to bond with others in a loving manner was twisted into a bonding process based on violent aggression. Mary responded to others based on how she herself had been treated. When a mother is a source of fear for a child, some cope by developing protective mechanisms against the outside world, which for the developing sociopath is a constant threat. Of course, not all children raised in abusive situations become sociopaths. Genetic factors such as neurological damage also play a role. If a child is subjected to all of these conditions, the forecast can be deadly. She certainly showed no signs of being She certainly showed no signs of being sedated after murdering Brian. She was violent towards animals, a chronic bedwetter until her adult years, and while she hadn't set fires, she did destroy property in her brief career as a murderer. Those familiar with these triad of symptoms that characterise serial killers will also recognise that she probably wouldn't have stopped killing if unapprehended. Mary preyed on victims weaker than herself, and after the murders, interjected herself into the crime investigation. Living in fantasy world is fine for children, but not for psychologically disturbed violent offenders. The phrase rings ominous. Mary and Norma fantasised about being criminals and escaping to Scotland. We built it up until now it seems we keep hoping we'll be arrested and sent away, she said. We never talked about anything else except from doing terrible things and being taken away. Medical experts do not believe sociopaths can be cured. They are generally resistant to therapy, which Mary had proven throughout her incarceration. Some do speculate that aggressive tendencies quieten down with age. Perhaps Mary is better. We can't know for sure. Mary's mum received a letter from her asking her to tell the jury that she was the guilty one and responsible for her actions. Her mum later went on to do TV documentaries in which she describes that her and her husband's actions could have caused Mary to have done what she did. Although this could be looked at as her taking responsibility for her actions, it must be noted that she also sold her story to whoever would pay for it. Was this more abuse of her young daughter? Mary spent 12 years locked away and still blamed her offences on everybody else but herself, and was still dismissive. Mary did receive the best care to give her the best chance of rehabilitation and the tools to become a law-abiding citizen and a chance at a normal life. She was removed to Askham Grange and released by the age of 23. She has no record of any reoffences since her departure from the justice system. Mary was given long life I can't say it. We don't know who she is now a mother and a grandmother at the age of 67 in 2025, living a peaceful life. Was this a case of nurture versus nature? Do you believe that little Mary Bell would have committed these crimes if she was not brought up in a chaotic background of crime and violence? Or is it your view that evil runs in people's veins and she would have done the same with the best upbringing? This case focuses on Mary Bell, but I want you to keep the memory of Martin and Brian in your minds. These little innocent lives were taken too soon in the most horrendous way, and our thoughts are with their families who still have to live with their loss every day.